Chapter 4. The Lady Natalia Ducre. "Lady Natalia, it's time to get out. You've been in there all morning," Sora hollered as she rushed into Natalia's large chamber. Natalia was in her bathing room with the door shut and had been in there ever since the sun came up, 2 hours prior. "The Lord and Lady Ducre are waiting for your parents for dinner. Don't keep your father and mother waiting, child," Sora hollered as she barged into Natalia's bathroom. The candles were lit, nearly melted down to the core, and Natalia laid in her tub, covered in stale bubbles. "Sora, leave me alone. I'm not coming down yet. I'm still soaking," Natalia fussed as she sat up in her tub. "Don't you mean sulking? I know that water isn't hot anymore, and you should be a wrinkled prune by now. Now come out and air out that soggy body of yours," Sora said, motioning her dark hands for Natalia to stand up. Sora was a middle-aged woman with dark skin and hair and eyes that were as black as the night sky. She was a large woman with a personality to match that could keep anyone in line, except Natalia, who did whatever she pleased. Sora was loud and boisterous and blunt and possessed an islander accent like Natalia's mother, but hers seemed to be much stronger. The Ducre family was the only family that Sora had patience for. Sora was like a mother to Natalia and had been Natalia's handmaiden ever since she was born 16 years ago. But even though Natalia put up her guard and acted like she didn't care what Sora said, she still loved her and seemed to be closer to Sora than her own mother and father. Natalia's mother and father were always so busy, just like any other noble couple of Minselthwaite. With her father being a marquise and her mother a marchioness, her family was one of the most powerful families in Minselthwaite. Lord Fernand seemed to always be off with business, and Lady Christiane was always shopping, having tea with other courtiers and noblewomen, or locked in her personal study room of their huge home, reading or writing. Lady Ducre would bring Natalia along sometimes to have tea, only if other courtiers her age were there, or if she wanted her to meet someone else involving the aristocrats of Minselthwaite. But most of the time, Natalia would be with Marissa anyways, doing their own shopping, having their own tea gatherings, or just stopping by Terran's shop to say hello. "Sora, let me be," Natalia said as she reclined back into the tub. Stale bubbles fluffed out over the edges of the tub, looking like soft, dry clouds. "Just inform my father and mother that I'm skipping dinner. I feel ill," she said as she hit some bubbles off of the side of the tub. "Child, I already did that. I know you like the back of my hand, and I knew you wouldn't get out anyway." "I just told you that they're waiting so you would get out of that tub," Sora said sternly. "And you are not ill. If I told the Lord and Lady that you were ill, they'd have those physicians up here faster than I could tell them. We don't need your pretty blood drained for no reason. You know how them physicians do. One word of being ill and they drain you like a milked cow." Natalia just acted like she didn't hear her. Natalia never cared that Sora always got stern with her, or that she didn't address her by saying "your ladyship" during every conversation they had. Considering that she was her servant, she was used to it, and it didn't bother her. "Sora, don't be so sore," Natalia mocked, smiling. She knew that Sora hated when she said that. She hated when Natalia mocked her name. "Child, get out of that tub," Sora yelled again as she scooped Natalia's small, naked frame out of the almost cold water. Sora's large body seemed to easily lift her out of it, getting bubbles and water everywhere, including her apron and dress. "Sora," Natalia whined as she wiggled away from her grasp, trying to cover herself. "Why do you do such things?" Sora just shook her head as she grabbed Natalia's robe, then put it on her. "I am not a child," Natalia fussed as she snugly wrapped the robe around her. "Then stop acting like one. You know I have to clean that tub of yours. You're making me behind on my chores, and you know you have your afternoon lessons. A noble lady must be well educated," Sora fussed as she directed Natalia out of the bathing room and into her room, nearly pushing her over. "Now I have to clean that mess," she said as she grabbed an undergarment from Natalia's large wardrobe. How do you take a bath for 2 hours? And what are you pouting for anyway? You knew this day would come for a couple of years now. It is a sad thing that we'll be losing our princess, but you need to keep your pretty little head up. Cheer up, my lady, okay? Sora said, now smiling, patting Natalia on the shoulder. Sora's mood always switched from irritated to sincere within seconds. Natalia always thought she was kind of unstable and stressed out and just needed to relax sometimes. But I will be losing my companion, my sister, and I will have no one to talk to or be with every day, Natalia said, frowning. Child, you are so dramatic. You got your mother, Sora said as she took the robe off of Natalia and then helped slip her undergarment down over her head. Natalia just laughed at her comment. You expect me to talk to the Lady Ducray, or shall I say, the most honorable Marchioness of Ducray, every day? Natalia said sarcastically as she rolled her eyes, mocking the way her mother and father would be announced and addressed when they would first arrive to any royal function. Don't you mock your mother, child, and what about that handsome young shopkeeper named Taryn? He's one of your friends and you and Marissa are always chatting with him at his little shop, Sora said as she walked back over to Natalia's wardrobe, pulling out a red gown, her favorite red gown. Yes, well, Natalia said with a shy smile as she looked away from Sora. I am very fond of Taryn, and he is and always will be a great companion to me. And even though we are friends, Natalia stopped speaking, as if she were too shy to continue. It just won't be the same without Marissa here, and Sora, you know, as well as I do, that my mother has been wanting me to socialize with other courtiers and nobles now that Marissa is leaving Mincelthwaite, Natalia said as she sat on a small chair next to her bed. I know every lady and every eligible bachelor and lord in Mincelthwaite, but I choose not to associate with just snobbish people. Every courtier and noble in Mincelthwaite carries themselves of high and mighty. I cannot stand that, Natalia fussed as she pushed herself off the small chair and walked over to her wooden vanity to brush out her long brown hair. Sora smiled, as if she was amused at what Natalia was ranting on about. And my mother is always setting up tea dates with the Lady Delisa Vaughn and the Lord Frederick Vaughn for me. I can't stand those twins. They annoy me so, Sora. I don't know why my mother wants me to associate with such condescending, annoying people. But after today, it seems as if that will be the only people I will be able to affiliate with. Besides Taryn, my mother does not want me to socialize with Taryn. She actually forbids it. I could just imagine my parents bellowing out, "What impropriety is this?" Natalia mocked in a voice she thought her parents sounded like. Taryn is loving and kind, and I will always want him in my life, Natalia said as she brushed her hair irritably. Calm down, child, before you brush your hair straight out of your pretty little head, Sora said as she fiddled through Natalia's small jewelry box, picking out the usual brooch and hairpiece that she usually wore with her red dress. Child, you know you act like them too. Don't go casting stones, it will come back and hit you square in the nose. Sora, that's not fair, Natalia fussed back as she smacked her hairbrush back on her vanity. Child, you sound like your mother when she gets spoiled milk for breakfast, fussing over things that don't even matter. Come, get dressed. You have lessons in an hour. Natalia giggled at Sora's comment. She then stood up to get dressed. I'm skipping my lessons this afternoon and meeting Marissa in the marketplace instead. This is the last time I will be meeting my sister before she leaves. I hate how it will be our last meeting ever, Natalia said, staring out of the window into the open field which surrounded their massive castle-like home. It's a lovely day as well. Maybe today will be a beautiful ending for Marissa, Natalia said with a frown. Oh yes, it will be, especially with that grand feast and ball that is tonight, Sora said as she helped Natalia dress. How lovely everything will be with the dancing and beautiful young ladies and those handsome young men. And I can only imagine the beautiful decorations and all of that wine. I'm so excited for you all. Oh, how I wish I could go, Sora exclaimed. It would be in my wildest dreams to ever participate in such a royal function. Sora said, chuckling. I would probably spoil everything. Oh, hush, Sora, Natalia said, pulling her long hair to one side, over her shoulder. They are indeed beautiful and enjoyable, but I'm not as excited about this one. I do hope that it goes well for Marissa's sake, and I hope Marissa has a splendid time as well. Maybe tonight will help release some stress that she has been carrying around about her. But only God knows, Natalia said as she looked into her mirror that stood next to her vanity. Sora tightened Natalia's laced-up bodice that fit snugly around her torso. She looked beautiful in her elegant red dress. The sunlight from the window reflected off of the small red jewels that were sewn onto her beautifully embroidered bodice. Sora clasped a gold chain around her neck that had a red jewel that dangled from it. The round jewel sparkled as the sunlight played off of it. You always look so lovely, Sora said with a big smile. She looked at her like a proud mother would at her child. Natalia studied herself in the mirror, appearing surprised, as if she had never seen herself in a red dress before. Her vibrant green eyes and light brown skin looked beautiful against the expensive red fabric. There was an urgent knock at the door. Natalia turned quickly to open it, wondering who would be knocking so boldly at her door. She opened the door to find that it was just Alexa, another servant of the house. She was a short, chubby girl about the same age as Natalia. She had curly blonde hair that was back in a frazzled bun and rosy red cheeks that had splotches of acne on them. Natalia wrinkled up her nose as she got a whiff of some of Alexa's body odor. She always smelled of roasted poultry. Excuse me, your ladyship, she said nervously as she peered into the room. But is Sora at hand? The Lady Ducray has asked for her. Natalia rolled her eyes as she opened the door all the way. She walked over to the window, annoyed by Alexa's request. What is it, Alexa? Sora asked with an aggravated look on her face as she hung Natalia's robe back in the wardrobe. I'm so very sorry for bothering you both. I'm just the messenger, Alexa exclaimed nervously. She was right, but Natalia never understood why her mother needed Sora so much. The Marchioness had 3 other personal handmaidens, as well as random servants like smelly Alexa, who also worked in the household, to get whatever she wanted. Natalia thought that her mother would purposely do that because she was jealous of the relationship she had with Sora. It's quite all right, Sora, Natalia said as she leaned over onto the ledge of her opened window, her head propped up in her hands. The Lady Ducray desperately needs you, she said with an annoyed tone. After a minute or two, Natalia heard the heavy door close behind her. So this is how it will be from now on, Natalia thought as she still peered out of the window. She knew everything would be so different after that night was over, after Marissa left. She wouldn't really have anyone to talk to about her problems anymore. Her mother would slowly steal Sora away from her and replace her with someone like bland Alexa, and Marissa would be miles away as a queen over another land called Ishkar. What kind of name is Ishkar for a kingdom anyway? Natalia thought. Natalia closed her eyes as the cool air of the bright mid-morning brushed at her face and hair. The mixture of the cool air and warm sun seemed to clear her thoughts, comforting her. She opened her eyes, looking down. She was on the 2nd floor, but seemed higher than that. She could see their rather large vegetable garden below, and that a couple of servants were on their knees pulling up lettuces and other vegetables. Fields of tall grasses and flowers waved back and forth in the breeze just beyond the garden. Natalia would never forget all the times when Marissa and she would ride their horses, Lily and Orchid, through those fields and pastures and through the apple orchards. Natalia looked down, noticing that between the garden and fields were tall bushes with white flowers all over them, which looked like white dots from her point of view. And just beyond the fields was a small forest, and just beyond that, Natalia could see the tall standing castle of Minselthwaite. She always thought her bedroom window had the best view in all of the kingdom. And just to the right of her, Natalia could see the far-off mountains of Minselthwaite, which looked like gray mountains of dirt painted on the horizon. Natalia had actually never gone that far off into the wilderness of Minselthwaite, but Taryn has. He used to always tell his stories of how he and his father used to venture off deep into the beautiful lands, discovering things that weren't even looked upon by any other human during their time. Even though the far-off lands were forbidden, they went into them anyways. Natalia caught the scent of wood and leaves burning as another breeze floated past her nose. The gardeners must have been burning some old dead leaves and random rotten branches that fell from the trees. The scent of the warm and spicy fire triggered a memory that she had forgotten. Natalia smiled softly as nostalgia came over her. She thought of the times when Taryn would tell her and Marissa different legends and myths about the land and all that inhabited it. How I wish I can go back in time, Natalia thought as she gazed off into the seemingly magical land of Minselthwaite. She thought of the moment during the summer that had just passed, when Taryn made a small fire in the woods one evening. The fire crackled and popped as Taryn threw some dried leaves into it. "Taryn, don't let the fire burn too greatly, for my sake, please," Marissa said as she sat down onto a log that lay a couple of feet from the small fire. Even though the fire was tiny, Marissa still didn't like it. She never did. "I won't, Marissa," Taryn said as he sat next to her, who sat next to Natalia. "This fire will stay just as it is." Taryn knew that Marissa was not fond of fire, but he never knew why. He thought maybe it was that she might have gotten burned by it at some point in her life. But he had gotten burned plenty of times in his life and never thought anything of the orange light. "It seems as if the sun was just going down," Natalia said, "and now it's absolutely dark out here." The forest seemed as dark as a cave because of the heavy overhang of the treetops and the thick timber and grass that surrounded them. That summer night was enchanting as fireflies danced in and out through the dark trees of the woods. The chirps of crickets made a soft melody as a hoot of an owl echoed through the darkness every now and then, creating a soft and relaxing tune. They had just left Taryn's house, where they ate some hearty vegetable soup that Morrow had cooked for supper, and decided to go for an evening stroll through the woods. Then it was Taryn's idea to make a little fire. The sun was just going down as Taryn finished getting the fire going. "I probably shouldn't have even started this fire. We should get going. Your parents will have the royal soldiers out looking for you both," Taryn said as he poked the crackling light with a long stick. "No, we should be all right," Marissa said as she pulled her long red hair over one shoulder. "My father doesn't even know I'm gone, and Lilith thinks I'm resting. I told Lilith that I was going to bed early, but I'm actually surprised that she hasn't discovered that I'm not in bed," Marissa said with a smile. "I would have already been bombarded with soldiers by now if she knew. I actually wouldn't be surprised if she was lurking around these woods right now looking for me," Marissa said as they both laughed. "Well, my mother and father never know where I'm at, and Sora probably is wondering what I'm up to, but she knows that I'm with you both," Natalia said as she swatted a small bug that kept swooping in front of her face. "Marissa, if you don't mind me asking, don't you think that Lilith is a little strange? I don't want to offend you because she is your head handmaiden, but she's very deviant, and I don't think she's fond of me," Taryn said, looking into the cozy little fire. "Yes, I'm very well aware," Marissa said as she giggled a little. "She's very different, and of course I don't know why she keeps her distance away from you. But she has been my servant since I can remember. But actually, over this past week, it seems as if she hasn't really been caring about how I feel lately. I may be acting like a child, but I feel like I need more emotional support from her because of me having to leave this upcoming early spring," Marissa said, and then she went silent for a second or two. Natalia and Taryn stayed quiet as well because of the thought of Marissa leaving and didn't want to talk about it. And even though it was her special 16th birthday coming up in the spring season, none of them were as excited about it as they should have been. "But what I'm trying to say is that I think she has been doing things on purpose to upset me," Marissa continued as she fiddled with the curl end of her long hair. "What do you mean?" Taryn asked as he looked at her. She still kept her gaze on the tiny fire. "Well, for one thing, you both know how I feel about fire, and she knows this as well, but I find that she lights the fireplace in my room more often now, just to taunt me." It's not cold outside and we're in the middle of summer, for God's sake, Marissa fussed as she twisted her hair into one thick lock. Have you said something to her about it? Asked Natalia. Actually, yes, I have. And she just says that she thought that I might have wanted it lit. And then she always says that she forgets that she lit it and didn't mean to, Marissa said as she shook her head and rolled her pretty blue eyes at the same time. You just have to be mean to her to make her get the point, Natalia said with a big smile. That's what I would have done. Yes, we know that, Terrence said as he laughed a little. Well, maybe so, but I just can't be mean to someone. I don't think I've ever raised my voice at any of my handmaidens. I think I would feel bad about it afterwards. Besides, she says she doesn't mean it. Maybe it's all in my head about her doing it on purpose to upset me. I guess I need to get over this fire nonsense. I'm about to be considered a woman and a queen soon enough, but I just can't help it. There was silence for a moment. Then the flickers of the firelight reminded Taryn of something. Can I ask you another question? Taryn asked, still looking at Marissa. If you don't mind me wondering, what is it about fire that frightens you? Marissa was quiet, still gazing into the small fire that illuminated with a soft orange glow, painting spots of gold on everything that it touched. It crackled softly and seemed to add another melody to the music of the crickets and owls. Natalia glanced at Marissa and knew that she didn't like to talk about her fears. But Natalia wondered about the same thing as well. Of course she knew that Marissa didn't like fire, but she never knew why. And every time that subject came up, she would always ignore it or change what they were talking about. Natalia felt bad for not changing the subject herself, but she wanted to know as well and knew that it would be good for Marissa to talk about it anyways. A small tear began to roll down Marissa's cheek as the fire's soft light danced on her beautiful face. Anxiety began to build up inside of her. She was still quiet as more tears swelled up in her crystal blue eyes, making them sparkle. I'm so very sorry, Terrence said, breaking the awkward silence. I should have never been so bold to ask such a question. No, Marissa said, cutting him off. I need to stop acting like a child. But to tell you the truth, I really don't know why I get so emotional or why I'm so terrified of blazing fires. This small fire is fine and could be stomped out in a second, and it doesn't make me feel so uncomfortable. But it's the big fires, the uncontrollable ones, that terrify me so, Marissa said, wiping the tears from her eyes. I just get this sad, horrible feeling when I come near a fire, and I feel as if I have just lost someone I love or someone I am close to. My heart starts pounding in my chest and I begin to become terrified. I just get this horrifying feeling that someone I love has been tortured in it, and I don't know why. And I hate the way it feels, and I hate that I have no idea why I feel like this. But when I look into the flames, I get these flashes of someone being burned and burned and burned and screaming out, and no one will stop to help. Marissa started to cry as she covered her face with her hands. Natalia and Taryn were shocked, not expecting anything that came from her mouth. They both rubbed her back, trying to calm her down. It's okay, Natalia said as she put her arm around her friend, pulling Marissa closer to her. No, it's really not, Marissa said, wiping her eyes again. I feel that it's not okay. There has to be some reason why I feel this way. They were quiet for a while, giving Marissa time to calm down. Taryn thought to himself, wondering what he could say next without offending her. I'm sorry, Marissa. I never meant to get you upset. I didn't know, Taryn said quietly as he wiped a teardrop from her chin. She looked at Taryn and smiled her beautiful smile again as her eyes twinkled in the firelight. It's okay, Taryn, Marissa said, not sounding upset. I think I'm happy that you've asked. I kind of feel relieved that I've told someone, and that it was both of you and not anyone else. I've never told anybody about this because of the fear of someone thinking that I might be mad. Marissa laughed a little, still hugged up against Natalia. "We don't think that of you," Natalia said, kissing her head. "Thank you," Marissa said, sniffling. "Well, on the other hand, you are stranger than an old noblewoman with a bucket of brew," Natalia said in a loud voice, mocking her beloved Sora in her islander accent. They all laughed, breaking the intense feelings of angst that developed among them. A huge smile crept across Marissa's face. She quickly grabbed a huge wad of dead leaves and threw them at Natalia. "Marissa, that wasn't at all ladylike," Natalia snapped as she pushed Marissa off of the log. They both laughed again, including Taryn. Marissa just lay on her back on the crisp leaves and fresh earth, pulling Natalia down with her. "Marissa, I don't want to be associated with the filthy ground and dead leaves," Natalia fussed as she got up quickly, dusting the leaves and dirt off of her deep blue-colored gown. "Well, I already have when I threw them in your face. What's the difference?" Marissa laughed as she just lay there, putting her hands beneath her head. "Come on, Natalia, don't be a ninny," Terrence said with a big smile as he lay down next to Marissa. Natalia just rolled her eyes as she crossed her arms, sitting back down on the log. "I am a lady," she said as a smile appeared on her face. "You know, Natalia, you look like Fiara with those flames glowing behind you like that," Terrence said with another one of his teasing smiles. "Who is Fiara?" Natalia asked, picking a leaf out of her long brown hair. "And don't insult me." "Isn't she an immortal Thracian goddess?" Marissa asked, propping her feet up on top of the log next to Natalia. "The elders of Mincelthrace say that she is a seductress, a promiscuous woman of beauty who knows the secrets of any man who gazes upon her," Marissa said with a low voice, trying to sound mysterious. "She sounds like a mysterious trollop," Natalia said nonchalantly, making Marissa giggle. "Well, legend has it that she is a goddess, a lady of fire, and the sister of Hafen and Dulcea. They are the goddesses of water and earth. Fiara dwells far off in the south, deep in this land towards the mountains. She lives with other women who wait on her hand and foot, serving her as if she were the creator of fire. Haven dwells behind the great falls, and Dulcea dwells deep in the heart of the Black Forest." Terrence spoke as if he were telling a ghost story, speaking low and mysteriously. "And obviously, that's where we get our great landmarks names from. The Mount Fiara, Haven Springs, and the dark lands of Dulcea." "Do you believe it? That there really are goddess-like women out there who live to be worshipped as the creators of fire, water, and earth?" Marissa asked, sitting up, pulling her long red curls over her shoulder as she combed through it. "Well, I only believe in one God, who is the creator of this earth and the sun and the moon and the heavens. These legends of Fiara and her sisters are just old beliefs of our pagan ancestors, long ago before the great king from the past brought his mighty words to the land of Mincelthrace, which were later written down in a book. I don't believe in goddesses. They are just interesting stories that are told and passed on from generation to generation. But I do believe that there are monsters and evil beings out there that live to spread false prophecies. And I believe that these beings want to be worshipped as a god, to live on and rule as a great god, and to crush every believer and follower of our own true God. My father used to tell me stories of the old legends of Mincelthrace and of the ancient pagan goddesses that some elders believe in still to this day. They make great bedtime stories, though, Terrence said, sitting up as well. But do you think there really are women out there deep in these lands who live that way still to be worshipped? Natalia asked, interested in the conversation. Well, I will tell you that when I was a young boy, my father and I went on a journey deep into these lands to fetch some things to sell in our shop. Things like special herbs and flowers to make oils with. I remember that we had a compass and a drawn-out map of Mincelthrace. I know that we went really far because I remember that it took us a couple of days by horse. And I remember one of those afternoons we set up camp in the Black Forest because my father was tired. He fell asleep quickly. Shortly after we set up camp, I decided to look around a bit, just to see what was around. And then I heard a voice of a woman singing. It seemed to echo through the woods, and I still remember to this day how beautiful and sad it sounded, full of melancholic mystery. So of course, I followed the voice, and it led me to a small temple, covered in nature that grew all around it. You could tell that it was ancient because of the way the trees took over it. I remember how the vines and other greenery seemed to grow all over the place, inside and out of the old temple. Then once I stepped inside of the temple, the singing seemed to fade away. Then I remember seeing a figure walk past one of the many columns towards the back of the temple. I really couldn't tell who it was because I stayed glued in the great threshold of the entrance. Then I ran back to the camp, which was about 20 minutes walk away from the temple. I woke my father up. I remember how alarmed he looked. So I told him what I saw and led him to the ancient temple. And as soon as he saw it, he knew exactly what it was because of a symbol that was etched in the stone above the doorway. Apparently, it was a symbol of Dosia. But we didn't go into the temple. I remember my father said that it could be dangerous and infested with evil spirits. But I wish we would have, because to this day, I always wonder who it was that I saw and whose voice it was that I heard. Marissa and Natalia were quiet, as if in awe by what they had just heard. I would like to see it, Marissa said, smiling. All my life, I have never gone beyond the great fields of this kingdom. I have never seen what's out there in these lands. Well, that was the only temple that I've ever seen. After my father died, I've never went that far into the lands again. It's far too dangerous and forbidden. But apparently there are 3 other temples out there that were built many years ago to honor the other 2, Fiara and Hafen. 3 other temples? Marissa asked, looking confused. But I thought you said that there were only 3 goddesses total. But there's a 4th great temple far off to the south. It sits just before the great mountains on the edges of its shadowed cliffs. This temple was built many years ago, subsequent to the other 3 temples. Legend has it that once a year, there would be a great celebration at that temple commemorating the 3 goddesses and their work they had done for the land that year. Every adult consisting of the upper class of the kingdom traveled to the temple, leaving their children at home with their servants. The people brought with them one young virgin woman against her will, usually a very beautiful one. These people would stay up all night, drinking, laughing, dancing, celebrating the prosperous harvest of that year. Then at the peak of twilight, they would bring the beautiful and pure young woman up to the top of the temple, dress her in a black gown, then they would sacrifice her to the goddesses in return for the great year that the goddesses allowed them to have. Taryn's blue eyes glowed in the firelight as the girl sat, awestruck. Oh my, Natalia said with wide green eyes. How disgusting and horrifying. Our ancestors were brutal. Yes, things were very different a long time ago, and more treacherous, Marissa said as she sat on the log next to Natalia. Animosity was a lover of our land. Terrence stayed where he was at, sitting still on the ground beneath them. We are now in a period of grace. Thank God for the ancient king who brought the truth and the word of light to Minselthwaite, Terrence said, looking up at them. I think Minselthwaite would still be a pagan country today if it wasn't for him. God brought him to this country long ago to take the blindfold from our ancestors' eyes. But like I said, there are still people today in Minselthwaite who choose to practice the old ways and worship the false gods. That is so strange, Marissa said with a yawn. And as much as I think this conversation is interesting, I think it's about time I go back to the castle. I'm getting awfully tired. I agree, Natalia said, standing up. I'll lead you to the edge of the forest where Lily and Orchid are, Terrence said, standing up as well, because I wouldn't want either of you to become snatched and sacrificed, he said facetiously. Marissa laughed as Natalia shoved him. The firelight got dimmer as it was very close to dying, making the crackle die down as well. But the crickets still chirped and the owls still hooted as Terrence stomped out the fire before they left to go home. Lady Natalia, you get your precious little head out of that window before you fall straight to the ground like a sack of potatoes, Sora said, startling Natalia. Oh, Sora, you frightened me, Natalia said, turning around to find Sora in the doorway. Natalia glanced at her, then back at the beautiful scenery of Mincelthwaite. That was a quick errand. Well, I was gone for a while, Sora said as she walked over to where Natalia was standing. Your mother wanted me to fix her hair up. She says I do it best. Yes, well, you've had plenty of practice on mine, Natalia said, looking back at Sora with a friendly smile. That's the truth, Sora said, smiling. Well, I gotta go finish my chores. I have a lot to do today before the night. Yes, don't we all, Natalia said, looking back out of the window towards the castle.